Please welcome Jeffrey Lord.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and most importantly, thank you for all that you do. You know, the Obama administration has made a point of calling its critics, among other things, extortionists and terrorists. So you couldn't be a nicer group of extortionists and terrorists, and I'm happy to be here. I call you the heirs of Ronald Reagan. The Tea Party has been very clear right from your spontaneous beginning. You were deeply concerned about the fiscally irresponsible actions of the federal government, the misguided stimulus spending, the bailouts, the takeovers of private industry. Your goals were equally as clear as they were Reagan-esque. Improve America through renewed support for fiscal responsibility, constitutionally limited government, and free market economic policies. And for believing in liberty and fiscal sanity, you were demonized right from the very beginning. It was astonishing, if unsurprising, to watch the torrent of abuse directed at the Tea Party. I can tell you this kind of abuse was directed at Ronald Reagan for believing exactly the same kind of things. He was called evil by House Speaker O'Neill, a president who was cold and mean and cruel. And yes, but of course, Ronald Reagan was inevitably called a racist. This is, in fact, what the American left does, particularly when they are losing the argument. The Tea Party is racist? Really? Really? Perhaps it's time to point out that this charge of racism from the left comes from members of a political party that has proudly stood for, and I want to be specific here, 6 platforms that supported slavery. They opposed the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the Constitution that successively wiped out slavery and gave both legal rights and voting rights to black Americans. They supported segregation actively or by silence in 20 platforms. They opposed anti-lynching laws specifically supported by the Republican Party in 4 platforms. And liberals didn't just support the Ku Klux Klan, they were the Ku Klux Klan, regularly electing Klan members to the United States Senate, the House of Representatives, and the nation's governorships when not putting a Klan member on, yes, the Supreme Court of the United States. These are people with a long and wretched political history of depending on any and every scheme imaginable, then and now, that judges their fellow Americans by skin color. And they have the nerve to call the Tea Party racist? It is more than past time to call them out and tell the party of slavery, segregation, lynching, the Ku Klux Klan, racial quotas, to quit judging their fellow Americans by skin color and get back to the business of getting this country on the road to fiscal health and economic growth. You have also received considerable criticism from establishment Republicans. They too once scorned Ronald Reagan. No one, by the way, knows this better than our friend Mark Levin. I can't say enough about Mark's ability to bring the Constitution and the founding principles of this nation back once again front and center. He is a national treasure, and we owe him a considerable debt of gratitude. Mark and Ronald Reagan's biographer Craig Shirley certainly remember, as I do, that in March of 1980, as Governor Reagan was on his way to winning the Republican nomination for president, former President Gerald Ford went to the New York Times to say of Governor Reagan the kinds of things that are said of the Tea Party today. Ronald Reagan, said President Ford, was too extreme. He was a sure loser because and I'm quoting here, a very conservative Republican can't win a national election, unquote. As you may recall, President Ford had lost to Jimmy Carter 4 years earlier. Ronald Reagan not only beat Jimmy Carter in a 44-state landslide in 1980, 4 years later he won re-election by 49 votes. 49 states, not 40, that was George Bush, no, sorry. Sorry. Which lastly brings me to President Reagan and his great friend, Margaret Thatcher. There is a reason Ronald Reagan won 2 landslides, and Margaret Thatcher was the longest-serving British Prime Minister of the 20th century, winning 3 elections in a row. Both believed, with the Tea Party, in drawing a line in the sand that clearly separates right from left. That is not only the key to victory, they were right about this, and the establishment was wrong. President Reagan referred to establishment Republicans of the type the Tea Party does battle with every day as fraternal order Republicans. Mrs. Thatcher summoned a term from the British school system and called her establishment conservatives the Wets. Both believed that the politics of what Ronald Reagan called the fraternal order and Mrs. Thatcher disdained as consensus politics were roadmaps to defeat. In fact, one suspects if there had been a Tea Party in Britain, Mrs. Thatcher would have been its leader. Said she scornfully of the consensus politics that she believed had brought repeated defeats to the Conservative Party in Great Britain, and I'm quoting here, "The Old Testament prophets didn't go out onto the highway saying, 'Brothers, I want consensus.' They said, 'This is my faith. This is my vision. This is what I passionately believe. Go out, preach it, practice it, fight for it, and the day will be ours.'" So as you go about your Tea Party challenges this year to the Republican establishment, the fraternal order Republicans, whether here on Capitol Hill or across the land, I would urge you to take the understanding of Ronald Reagan that there is a time for choosing and take to heart the words of Margaret Thatcher, if I may Americanize them. Go out into the highways and byways of America and make it plain, as Ronald Reagan did. Tell the American people, this is my faith, this is my vision, this is what the Tea Party passionately believes. Go out, practice it, preach it, fight for it, and the day will be yours. Thank you very much.